Welcome back. Now let's head to the markets. We have Willie Bonga with the details. And yeah, from a positive close yesterday at intraday. Yeah. Not looking bad.
Not looking bad. You know, the NGX sustaining that bullish sentiment from yesterday where it saw its first positive close for the week. Gladly, yeah, the first one for this week.
Last trading
for the
week
last trading week of June, we saw that positive close, and it was sustained at intraday, up strongly at 0.45%, nearly 0.5% there, and 99,828, nearing the 100,000 level.
200
points away from regaining the 100,000 points there. But hopefully, you know, the market sustains this bullish sentiment, and we don't see that, you know, reversal in the trend. And it's, you know, we don't need any reversal at the moment.
I'm looking forward to the monthly close at this point. Is it going to be able to stay above 100,000? I guess the bets are on at this time.
Of course, definitely. Let's look at other markets. We saw mostly positive sentiments there, but South Africa, however, was in the red, 0.59% down, 78,000 points. Oh, it's still looking good there, but you know, we've got some market news right now. You know, Nigeria's still talking about Nigeria's NGX. We see Femi Otedola, the billionaire businessman, has acquired additional shares in FBN Holdings. That's valued at 183 million naira. Now, this fresh acquisition was disclosed on Wednesday in a corporate filing on the NGX, and development comes 2 days after he bought over 797 million shares. That's a big one for Otedola, is moving in on FBN Holdings shares, not letting that stock breathe there. And looking at, we talked about South Africa. Now let's see how the EGX 30 did at intraday. We see that it was up over 1%, now at 27,783 points. And Kenya's closed Wednesday session in the red. Let's check in on activities now at the NASD market and see how they fared. We've been talking about the unlisted. We're talking about the unlisted securities exchange right now, the NASD. And joining us is Davina Adeniyi, Chief Executive Officer, Bestwood Asset and Trust Limited. Good afternoon, ma'am. It's good to have you on the program. Let's begin with last week's performance at the NASD. We've been seeing the over-the-counter, that's the OTC Securities Exchange, closed on a negative note week on week, 1.32% down. We know it was a holiday shortened week. But this week it's been shaky as well, particularly on Tuesday. The index was down more than 2%, that's 2.38% to be precise. But we saw that bounce back yesterday. What has influenced this poor performance? Is it just profit taking? Hello, Ma, could you unmute your mic? I can't hear you. Okay, I think we've lost Ms. Davina Adeniyi there. So let's just move on now to see what was happening in the Middle East markets. We've seen Abu Dhabi index up 0.3%. We've seen majorly positive sentiment also in the Gulf there, but Dubai is down 0.24%. Now, still within the region, Saudi is up 0.64%. Let's look at that very quickly. And Qatar leading the gains in that region with a 0.92% gain. Very strong movement for that index. Now, let's look at the U.S. and see how the futures market fared in early trade today after the S&P 500 rose for a second day. Now, the S&P 500 futures is down 0.14%. Same for the NASDAQ. Same level, 0.14%. And we see the Dow Jones Industrial Average falling 0.17%. Now, Micron shares slipped 5% in extended trading after the chip maker issued the fourth quarter revenue guidance in line with estimates. Now, even as the company beats third quarter expectations, Levi Strauss, looking at the fashion industry, we're seeing that one drop 12% after the jeans maker latest quarterly revenue also disappointed investors. Now, bank stocks were in focus after the Federal Reserve said Wednesday that the biggest U.S. firms are able to withstand a severe recession scenario. Goldman Sachs, the shares slid 1.7%, while JP Morgan Chase shares rose slightly. Now, corporate earnings continue today with releases from Walgreens, Boots, Alliance, and Nike. Well, let's circle back to the NASD or listed equities market. I think Mrs. Adeniyi is back. She's going to give us what's going on in that segment. Mrs. Adeniyi, I was talking about the drop in the NASD market. We've seen the market has been performing not so great. We saw that 2.38% drop on Tuesday. We know that last week it was a holiday shortened week. We saw week on week that drop as well. What has influenced, what is driving this poor performance on the NASD, despite the fact that it bounced back yesterday?
Yeah, thank you very much, Will. Well, some of the negative sentiment that might be making some of the aspects, some of the companies quoted fade away are majorly monetary, in the sense that we've noticed that at the beginning of this regime, we actually inherited a challenging economic situation, and then you find a situation where there was a fuel subsidy pronouncement by the Tinubu regime, and then there was pressure on the Naira. Remember that the CBN could not remit dollar foreign airlines at some point, and then we find a situation where generally there appeared to have been a gloomy situation around, the economy. And in an attempt to drive economic development and the growth, the CBN then adopted a free-floating policy for Naira against international currencies as at June 14th, 2023. That was last year. And then the aim was to let the market forces determine, naturally, the forces of demand and supply of foreign currency determine the Naira value. This resulted in a substantial devaluation of our currency, and then with significant negative implications of the Nigerian economy. You would notice that in the parallel market, there was a devaluation, and that the Naira at some point in time fell all the way from 754 Naira to about 1,408 Naira as against $1. That's about 86% depreciation in the value of our currency. And of course, we noticed that in the official market, devaluation fell from about 770 to about 1,417 Naira as against the dollar. That's about 84% devaluation. So you now have a situation where, you find a lot of investors, having this reluctant apathy towards investment because of this upside fluctuation up and down of our currency. So no doubt that has had a negative sentiment on the appetite to invest in the equity.
Okay, and this is not as a result of companies performing poorly, especially the bellwether stocks.
Yeah. So basically, you find some of the stocks listed, like in the NASD, for example. You take a stock. Let's just do a rundown of the major stocks that are trading. You have stocks like CSCS, stocks like UBM Properties, stocks like NASD, and then the WAMCO. So in recent times, two of the companies that are majorly active on the NASD, like the CSCS and Aradel, you notice a situation where they had just recently paid some attractive dividends. So you find a situation where the price will naturally, regain its position from cum div to ex div price to stabilize. It will go down for a bit. And then you find a situation where it has become stable now. Now, haven't dropped after the dividends were paid. Aradel paid as much as 170 Naira per unit. So it was adjusted from about 3,200 Naira to start off again on a stable rate at about 3,112 Naira after cum div. And then you find a situation where, of course, SCSCS also paid, and then they adjusted from about 21 Naira to about 19 Naira 50 kobo. So at this point in time, having done that, investors would now begin to look into the books again to find a way of readjusting and re-entering the market at a much lower rate. But I would notice today on the trades for today that there's a lot of activity on UBM Properties. We all know that our investors have a very strong appetite for penny stocks. UBM Properties is a stock that is going for just about 1 Naira 81 kobo. So, of course, what do you expect? You expect investors to flood there, particularly when there is hope that, with all of these new bank policies that, try to encourage them to list, to raise funds. It's very low for UBN properties, and I think they have space for growth being a penny stock. That doesn't, make us forget the fact that Aradel again has bounced back. The transactions today are looking bullish. There's a lot of energy there. You find up to about 100,000 units on bid, investors trying to buy, and we have only 10,000 investors trying to sell. So that shows that even at the rate of 5,200, it has a potential to end up on a higher note today.
So how do you see the market closing today, since you're saying that Ardell Holdings, which is in the oil and gas sector, is very bullish, doing so well, and UBN Properties also doing so well, investors are eyeing those stocks. How do you expect the market to close, and what's your outlook for next week?
Well, it's going to definitely close at a much higher, at the maximum today, from what I can see from the side of the supply and sale. So it's going to end up on a very, very positive note today. Right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Zavina Adeniyi, CEO, Bestworth Assets and Trust Limited, for sharing your insights on Business Incorporated.
Thank you for having me.
So let's look at the Asian markets now, which fell on Thursday. It's red for that region. Japanese yen weakened to a near 38-year low late on Wednesday, hitting 160.82 against the dollar, and that makes the dollar also hit a 38-year high, according to FactSet data. Now, Japan's Nikkei 225 fell 0.82% to 39,341 points. We see Kospi in South Korea closing down 0.29%, and the Hang Seng Index in China led losses in that region. It was down 2.06%. That's a massive drop for that region to a near two-month low in its final hour of trade. Now, mainland China's Shanghai closed a 0.9% down as well, and back-to-back hit for that region, not a breather, nearing a four-month low. Australia's ASX, S&P 200 paired losses earlier, but it still ended 0.3% down for that region. So I was just looking at all these happenings, especially Asia, and surprised that, a lot is happening, especially when they're looking to US and looking at what's happening with NVIDIA. We saw that rally for NVIDIA stocks after it slumped, the back-to-back sell-offs, and investors were bullish on it, buying it and popping that index, that stock price back up. We're now seeing prices coming down for, this in this market, especially investors that have been eyeing inflation data in Australia and looking to what direction they were going to put their money. I think they're being disappointed as to the decisions by the central banks.
They're not getting their way, at this point. The central bankers are still kicking the ball forward, this year. So who knows? We might not even get that cut in 2024.
Because
I think investors should just come to peace with that at some point.
Yeah, especially we're seeing that in Africa, inflation is ticking back up for some, African countries, and you're going to be mentioning that later. But it's just, we're wondering, you always ask, where do we get the soft landing? Where does this all peak? When does this all end?
Or no landing?
Or no landing.
We'll definitely find out. Thank you so much, Will, for the details right there. Most of the markets we track and